Alright, everyone, it's time for the Trouble with Tribbles. The Enterprise is called to Deep Space Station K7 by a distress call. It is near Sherman's planet, a world whose ownership is under dispute between the Federation and the Klingon Empire. Upon arrival, Captain James T. Kirk becomes furious when he finds out the reason for the distress call, which is made by Nils Barris, the Undersecretary of Agriculture for the sector. Barris wants someone to guard the shipment's quadriticale, related to triticale, bound for Sherman's planet. Grain bound for Sherman's planet. Since quadriticale is the only Earth grain that will grow on Sherman's planet, and thus is required to resolve the ownership issue. Kirk assigns 2 crewmen to guard the grain, but afterwards he finds out the Starfleet Command share Barris' concerns. In addition, a Klingon ship commanded by Captain Koloth arrives, who requests permission for his crew to board K7 for shore leave. Kirk agrees, but limits the number of Klingons at any one time, and they must travel under Starfleet guard while on the station. Meanwhile, an independent trader, Cyrano Jones, arrives on the station with some Tribbles. He gives one to Lieutenant Lahura, who brings on board the Enterprise. Red and its quickly produced offspring are treated as adorable pets. Aww. The animals purr a relaxing trill that the crew finds soothing. Klingons, however, find Tribbles annoying, and the feeling is mutual. Tribbles hiss and shriek whenever they are near Klingons. Dr. Leonard McCoy is concerned that the increasing number of Tribbles threaten to consume all the onboard supplies. It is discovered that they are entering ship systems, interfering with their functions, and consuming any edible contents present. Kirk realizes that the Tribbles are getting the ship's stores, and they are a threat to the grain aboard the station. He examines the hold but learns that it is already too late. Tribbles have eaten the quadriticale, and Kirk is literally buried in grain-gorged Tribbles when he opens a grain hold with an overhead hatch. Spock and McCoy discover that about half of the Tribbles in the hold are dead and many of the rest are dying, alerting them that the grain has been poisoned. Barris severally holds Kirk responsible for this apparent fiasco, and Koloth additionally demands an apology from Kirk after some of the Enterprise crew were provoked into a brawl with the Klingons in the station's bar. However, the Tribbles incidentally give away the identity of a Klingon agent masquerading as a human, Arn Darvin, Barris' own assistant. He had infected the grain with a virus that becomes an inert material in an organism's bloodstream, which eventually prevents the organism from taking in enough nourishment to survive. After Darwin's exposure and arrest, Cyrano Jones is ordered to remove the Tribbles from the station, a task that Spock estimates will take 17.9 years, or he'll be imprisoned for 20 years for transporting a dangerous life form off its native planet. Just before the Klingons depart, all the Tribbles on the Enterprise are transported onto the Klingon vessel by Chief Engineer Montgomery Scott, or in his words, "There'll be no trouble at all." Anyway, let's look at the production elements of the story. Writer Deaver Jold had been a fan of science fiction since he was a child. When Star Trek was first broadcast, he was concerned that it might run into something similar to Lost in Space, which he described as one full-color hour of trash reaching into millions of homes. Ouch. His first story outline was sent to Star Trek after his agent suggested that he wait until the show started to air under the theory that the show might drop an existing episode in favor of a better script. The story was entitled Tomorrow's Yesterday and was about the Enterprise coming across a generation ship which had descended into a 2-tier class system. His agent received a rejection letter from producer Gene L. Kuhn dated October 3, 1966. The letter stated that the outline was by no means inadequate. It is, as a matter of fact, very adequate, and went on to say that it would require a budget larger than that available to television, but would have made a good film treatment. Kuhn offered to meet with Gerald and explain what they were looking for, because they were not purchasing scripts at the time. Kuhn suggested that Gerald should wait until the following February to see if the show was renewed for a second season. They also discussed several story ideas, including some small furry creatures that bred too quickly. Kuhn thought it was a cute idea, but would be too expensive as they have to build each creature. In preparation for the second series submission, Gerald had put together 5 premises to pitch. He has best hopes on 2 treatments called Bandy and the Protracted Man, and decided to submit his 5th story despite Kuhn's earlier dismissal of the idea. It was called The Fuzzies. The idea was based on the introduction of rabbits in Australia in 1859, who reproduced at a vastly increased rate owing to the lack of predators. The initial premise placed the story on a space station to avoid the ecological damage that the creatures would have on a planet. However, Gerald's agent was concerned that requiring a miniature of the station to be built as well as the additional sets caused it to be too expensive for a single episode. Because of his agent's comments, Gerald modified the pitch to place the action on a colony planet instead. This pitch included the plot points such as the creatures getting into a poison grain storage, but omitted the Klingons, and Cyrano Jones was called Cyrano Smith. The 5 pitches were submitted by Gerald's agent in February 1967 and received a response in June. At the time, the show had already purchased too many scripts for the second season, but story editor D.C. Fontana suggested that they should purchase the story and assign it to a staff writer, as it was better than some of the other stories that they already had. At the time that Kuhn got in touch, Gerald had just been employed at CBS as a typist working on scripts such as the pilot of Hawaii Five-0. As soon as he got a response, he quit the job. Gerald and Kuhn met once more and revealed that the network had recently made a request for more episodes based on other planets. Kuhn told Gerald to work up a further pitch. The version of the story added the Klingons and moved the action from planetside to a space station. During a visit to the set, Gerald had the opportunity to speak to Leonard Nimoy and ask his advice on how to write for Spock, and was allowed to watch the dailies from each day's shoot of the episode The Doomsday Machine, which was being filmed at the time. This version of the story was entitled A Fuzzy Thing Happened to Me, which was purchased by Kuhn as a plot outline. He offered Gerald a chance to write the script himself, by promising not to hand it to another writer for a month. But he made it clear that he was not offering Gerald for a script, but giving him the option of submitting a draft. Gerald turned around the first draft script in 2.5 days. Both Kuhn and associate producer Robert Justman gave feedback on the script and pointed out a few gaps, such as there needed to be some way in the plot for the crew to discover that Darwin was a Klingon agent. The following draft had Cyrano Jones discover that Darwin was an agent, which Kuhn thought wasn't punchy enough. It was then rewritten so that the Fuzzies were allergic to Klingons. Both Jordan and Kuhn thought the idea was trite, shtick, hokey, and had been done before, but Kuhn agreed it was the direction the story should go. The rewrite of the script took a further week. On a further visit to the set, Gerald was called into Kuhn's office. He was informed that he needed to change the name of the Fuzzies, as the legal department was concerned about similarities in the name of H. Beam Piper's 1962 novel Little Fuzzy. He subsequently came up with a variety of alternative names. Through a process of elimination, he ended up with the name Tribble. He took the name to Kuhn, who hated it, but after seeing the alternatives, he agreed to it. Gerald turned the script on July 17th, entitled You Think You've Got Tribbles? Which, while despite Kuhn disliking the name, he bought it on behalf of the show. Such was the volume of subsequent edits made to the script by Kuhn, that Gerald thought he should have been given a co-credit. The problems were caused by the 12-point Eli typeface, 12 characters per inch, that Gerald's typewriter had used. Kuhn had approved only the second rewrite of the script after it was purchased, but when it was retyped in the standard 10-point Pica typeface, 10 characters per inch, it ballooned to 80 pages. This meant that some 20 pages needed to be cut from the script. Scenes which were cut from the script include the Enterprise chasing after Jones in his vessel, and result in the scene where Kirk has Tribbles tumbling onto him in the grain locker. Gerald later explained that this process tightened up the story and made for a better series of gags. Michelle Nichols said to Gerald, I've never seen a script go through so many changes and see so much the same. The proposed title, You Think You've Got Tribbles, had to be discarded after Shulman's short story was discovered with the title You Think You've Got Troubles, upon which the third season, The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis episode Dig 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 was based, which could have possibly have presented a copyright infringement. The episode was then renamed The Trouble with Tribbles. Producers liked the results so much that Gerald was later tasked with rewriting the script for I, Mudd. He didn't take any credit on the final script, as he didn't want to take the credit from Stephen Candle, the creator of Harry Mudd. Gerald worked on I, Mudd before The Trouble with Tribbles began to film. He was surprised one morning when he was handed a copy of the Tribble script and told to sign it for Robert A. Heinlein. It turned out that the Tribbles in the episode resembled the Marsh of Flatcats in Heinlein's 1952 novel The Rolling Stones. Gerald was concerned that he had inadvertently plagiarized the novel which he had written 15 years before. These concerns were brought up by a research team who suggested that the rights to the novel should be purchased from Heinlein. One of the producers phoned Heinlein, who only asked for a signed copy of the script and later sent a note to Gerald after it aired to thank him for the script. The Gray mentioned the script, Triticale, was a fairly new invention at the time of the episode. However, the expectations of the show and that it would be revolutionary were not realized, and it was eventually used as animal feed only. This changed in 2009. The Canadian government invested $15 million in research to find out if the grain had potential use as a biofuel. The use of live animals to represent the Tribbles was immediately rolled out. The inspiration for the formula Tribble instead came from a fluffy keyring owned by Holly Sherman. Sherman's planet in this episode was subsequently named after her. Nice! The design came from Wat Chang, but they were individually sewn by Jacqueline Kimure. She was paid $350 to sew 500 Tribbles from synthetic fur and stuff them with foam rubber. 6 special Tribbles were made, which were converted from toy dogs. Unfortunately, the toys were quite noisy, which required the soundtrack to be looped in during editing. Other Tribbles were created by Jim Rugg out of beanbags for when it was required for one to sit on a person or object, and the breathing Tribbles were hollow with surgical balloons inserted. In total, some 1,500 Tribbles were created for the episode. Some of these Tribbles were later displayed at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. in 1992. The sale at Christie's auction house in 2006 included Tribbles from this episode as part of a larger Star Trek sale. Because of the synthetic fur technology of the 1960s, relatively few original Tribbles exist as of 2010 because the fur fell out over time and they went bald. An original Tribble was sold at auction for 2003 for $1,000. Final filming began during the second week of August 1967. 3 temporary sets and a portion of corridor were constructed for specific use in this episode, which included the large trading post set. The chairs in that set were a problem, as the set designers wanted 24 matching chairs and decided that folding ones wouldn't do. John M. Dwyer sourced them from a local company. The numbers required meant that they had to be pulled out of showrooms from all over the country. When it came to the fight scene in the episode, Dwyer wanted director Joseph Penvey not to damage the chairs. That scene was filmed twice after a cameraman with a handheld camera wandered onto the set. The scene where Kirk is covered with Tribbles in the grain container needed to be filmed 8 times, using all 500 sewn Tribbles. Gerald had expected that scene to be cut at some point during production, as he thought William Shatner wouldn't agree to it. He said that Shatner was the consummate professional. I believe he was eager to show off his comic abilities. Penvey was pleased with the outcome of the shoot, calling the episode a delightful show from beginning to end. In addition to directing, Penvey also sourced some of the parts to create the Tribbles and was directly responsible for the casting of Stanley Adams. He had pushed for the episode to be made as he recalled that there was some resistance at the time against making a comedy-style episode. These sub-episodes were unusual for the series, as only The Trouble with Tribbles and A Piece of the Action were considered to be comedic episodes from Season 2. Penvey was one of the 2 most prolific original series directors, alongside Mark Daniels, and directed 14 episodes of the show. The cast responded favorably to the script. Nichelle Nichols was particularly pleased, as it allowed Uhura to be a woman and took her off the bridge. It was one of her largest roles in any single episode in the series. William Campbell had previously appeared in the first season episodes described Gothos as Trelane. In The Trouble with Tribbles, he portrayed the Klingon Captain Koloth. It was Gene Roddenberry's intention to bring back Koloth during the 3rd season of the original series, as felt that Kirk should have a recurring Klingon adversary. As Campbell was unavailable when the following Klingon-centric episode, Day of the Dove, was filmed, the role was rewritten and Michael and Sarah was cast instead, with the idea ultimately being dropped. Although Koloth returned to the animated series, Campbell did not voice the role. He returned to the role in 1994 for an episode of Deep Space Nine entitled Blood Oath, where the character dies in his final battle. At the time of casting, William Shallard had just finished filming the ABC sitcom The Patty Duke Show. He described himself not as a fan, and had read any science fiction since 1948. He thought that the role of Niels Barris was just another guest spot, and the role of a rather stuffy bureaucrat was not the most appealing character. He did not remember the character's name, only recalling it when he first attended a Star Trek convention at a hotel near Los Angeles Airport, and the fans called it out when he entered the lobby. He was later cast in the role of the Bajoran music Varani in the DS9 episode Sanctuary. Whit Bissell, who played the station manager Laurie, was better known at the time in the main cast role of Lieutenant General Haywood Kirk in the ABC science fiction television series The Time Tunnel. Michael Padicke, who portrayed the Klingon Korax, later went on to play Karanez in the Star Trek Next Generation first episode, Too Short a Season. Charlie Brill portrayed the Klingon agent Arn Darvin. Brill has previously been a sketch comedy artist with wife Mitzi McCall, and had appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show when the Beatles made their first appearance. Awesome! Anyway, let's look at the legacy of this episode. The Trouble with Tribbles was originally intended a follow-up episode during Season 3, but after Gene Roddenberry stepped back from the production of the show after a time slot change and further cuts in the budget, the idea was scrapped. In 1973, Gerald had become friends with D.C. Fontana from their time spent on the Star Trek convention circuit together. He had heard about Star Trek the Animated Series and offered to do an episode. Fontana responded that she wanted the Tribble episode that was cut from Season 3. The episode was entitled More Tribbles, More Troubles. The episode introduces the natural predator of the Tribbles, a genetically engineered Tribbles, which no longer reproduce but instead grow larger. As with his other animated series episode Bem, he later explained that almost nothing was cut from the original pitches for the third season of the original series, as animation played out quicker and so everything still fit into the episode despite the reduced running time. Both of Gerald's animated episodes were novelized by Alan Dean Foster, and Gerald later said that he thought that he did a fine job. To celebrate the 30th anniversary of Star Trek in 1996, producers of both Star Trek Voyager and Star Trek Deep Space Nine decided to incorporate elements of the original series into episodes. The Voyager episode Flashback showed events on board the Excelsior under Captain Kirk Sulu during the period in which Kirk and McCoy were imprisoned in Repenthe in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. However, the Deep Space Nine homage used the original footage from 19 scenes in The Trouble with Tribbles and other episodes in order to digitally insert the actors into the events of the episode, entitled Trials and Tribulations. The episode was nominated for 3 Emmy Awards, as with the original episode, the Hugo Award for Best Dramatic Presentation. As the 30th anniversary approached, Gerald had heard rumors of a Tribble sequel in the works, but had only heard denials from executive producer Rick Berman. Following an interview request from the New York Times, he telephoned Berman once more to ask what was happening, as he didn't want to say he didn't know about the sequel episode and embarrass anyone if it was actually going to happen. Gerald suggested that acknowledgement of the creator of the Tribbles might be in order, and asked if he could be an extra. He was cast as a security redshirt. While Gerald was on set, he also advised director Jonathan West on the integration of new scenes into The Trouble with Tribbles. Gerald later said that Trials and Tribulations turned out beautiful. I think it was the best episode of Deep Space Nine ever and possibly the best episode of Star Trek after the original series. Charlie Brill returned as Arn Darvin to film new scenes set in the DS9 time frame. Well, that was actually pretty cool. And yeah, this episode is definitely the highlight of Season 2 for me. So, I give The Trouble with Tribbles 5 warp cores out of 5. Well, join me in a little bit. As we meet the gamesters of Trixcalion. So, until then, live long and prosper, everybody.